Today on Locked On Blue Jackets, we're going to be talking about one of the big dogs on the Blue Jackets. We're going to be talking about Ulf Bjorkstrand, how his season is going, and just how high I think his ceiling could be. That's all coming up today on Locked On Blue Jackets.
Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets. You're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, here to bring you all of the news, the stories, the trials, tribulations, etc., of your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before I get started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day. And if you're listening over in the United States, then a happy Memorial Day to all of you. It is not holiday here, but I am glad that you all are enjoying your long weekend and hopefully finishing it off with some Locked On Blue Jackets, which is free and available on all podcast platforms and also over on YouTube. So if you haven't hit subscribe on YouTube, then why don't you do that? It can be your Memorial Day gift to me. Locked On Blue Jackets is never going to be behind a paywall, so 2 thumbs up for that. Today we're going to be continuing the season review that we've been doing, and we finally made it to one of the quote-unquote big dogs of the Columbus Blue Jackets. We're going to be talking today about Oliver Bjorkstrand, who honestly had even as far as Bjorkstrand goes, he had a really great season, I think, and he just keeps getting better and better. So let's talk a little bit about kind of how he got here. Bjorkstrand, obviously drafted by the Blue Jackets back in 2013, has been a regular in the lineup since 2017-18 when he played all 82 games. This season, he only played 80 games. He missed a couple of games due to just a niggling injury. Hit career highs in basically everything except penalty minutes. He did not hit a career high in penalty minutes, which is genuinely surprising. He had 28 goals, so just 2 short of 30, which is, so close. And maybe if he'd had those 2 extra games, he would have made it. 29 assists and 57 points. He hit his 100th career goal this season, which is obviously, super great. Not many Blue Jackets have hit 100 career goals, I don't think, especially guys that have been Blue Jackets the entire time. So let's talk a little bit about kind of the impact that he had on this team, because Oliver Bjorkstrand, and I've kind of been talking about this a little bit since Ken Johnson made his debut, there are main character players and then there are supporting character players. And I think Oliver Bjorkstrand is a main character that acts like a supporting character. He's super low key. He's one of those guys, kind of like Gus Nyquist, where you blink and suddenly he has a 4-point night. He's pretty streaky as far as goal scoring goes. He goes like 11 games without a goal, and then he's like, well, I guess I'll just have 5 goals in the next 3 games or something. So he comes. I would like a little more consistency. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. Is what I think Bjorkstrand needs to do to kind of hit that next level. But he is a great secondary piece to Patrick Laine. I think they were on the same line for part of the season. I don't necessarily think that we need to do that going forward, because I think, you want 2 legit scorers on 2 legit lines. And I think having those 2 guys separated is a really good idea, because, only one person can score with any particular goal, So split them up, split the scoring. And this also does my favorite thing, which puts Bjorkstrand on the second line and, put him with potentially Cole Sillinger and Ken Johnson. That's the drum I've been banging all off season and will continue to bang until Brad Larson gives me what I want. But we're not talking about that right now. We're talking about Bjorkstrand and the impact that he has had on this team. He led the team in scoring. He did not lead the team in points, but he got pretty darn close. I think he was second on the team in scoring this season. God, hilariously, it's still funny that Jake Voracek led this team in scoring with 6 goals, but that's beside the point. Oh yeah, Bjorkstrand, second in scoring. Patrick Laine just a point behind him, although obviously Patrick Laine played significantly fewer games, which, we're going to talk about Patrick Laine tomorrow, actually, because he's number 29 and Oliver Bjorkstrand is number 28. But having those two, and this is, again, something we're going to touch on in tomorrow's episode a little bit, so it's fun that we get to do these kind of back-to-back, because I think it's interesting to look at Bjorkstrand in the context of Patrick Laine and, vice versa. And that's what we're going to do a little bit in just a minute, is we're going to take a look at how Bjorkstrand can benefit from maybe playing on a different line with Patrick Laine, but playing on the same team. But first, I've got to tell you about BetOnline, because our partners at BetOnline continue to be the number one source for all your betting needs and sports information. There is a Game 7 tonight, so make sure you are maybe putting a little bit of money on the New York Rangers doing the dang thing and winning another Game 7. You can find all the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including basketball players, Major League Baseball scores, UFC, boxing, even things like next season's NFL futures, and of course, the Stanley Cup playoffs. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. So head to the website today, that is betonline.net, or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action, because BetOnline is where the game starts. So, let's talk Bjorkstrand and kind of the ceiling that I think he has. I think something else that's important to note as well with Bjorkstrand, he signed pretty long term. He was one of the, after the I was going to call it the Seth Jones drama. I don't really think there was any kind of drama per se, but after Seth Jones was traded, there was a sudden influx of long-ish term contracts. So Jenna signed pretty long term. Obviously, Werenski signed his 8 years, and Bjorkstrand, I think, signed a 5-year contract extension. 4-year contract extension. He's coming in at $5.4 million for the next 4 years, which honestly seems extremely reasonable for a guy that he could have scored 30 goals this season if he played all 82 games. And I don't think he's done hitting his peak yet. I think he had a much higher ceiling. And ironically, and this is something we kind of touched on in the first segment, I think he can hit that ceiling on the second line, because once you split up Line A and Bjorkstrand, then you have two 30-plus goal scorers. Line A could be a 40, 50 goal scorer for the Blue Jackets if he can stay healthy. He was a point per game before he got injured, and he had 26 goals in 56 games. I don't know. I can't do the math on how many he was on pace for, but it was definitely maybe 35 plus. So, if you can get 30 goals from Oliver Bjorkstrand and 35 from Patrick Laine, then it is just win, 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 honestly. But in terms of Bjorkstrand specifically, he kind of became a little bit more of a playmaker this season. He has always, I think, in every season except his first full season and last season, he has had more assists. He has had more goals than assists. This year it was pretty even. And something else as well, he had 9 of his 57 points, 19 of those were on the power play, 9 power play goals, which is, for a team that struggles to score on the power play, I don't know why you wouldn't just have Bjorkstrand out there all the time. And I think that's where you can really benefit from putting him with Line A, because he clearly is happy enough to pass on power play. But I think at even strength, you really want him separated. You want him on his own line. Maybe not driving the line by himself, although I do think he is kind of one of the sneaky, underrated players in terms of his transition game, in terms of his defensive responsibility. I don't think that gets talked about enough when you talk about Bjorkstrand. It's very much, oh, look at the shot he has. He has got a phenomenal shot, but I think he uses that to kind of sneak by. And when you look at kind of his underlying stats, his transition game is maybe the best on the team. I haven't looked at the stats exactly, but that would be my guess. He's pretty good in his own end. And that's why I think he should play with Sillinger and Johnson next season. And we're going to talk about that in just a minute. But first, I want to just kind of reiterate Oliver Bjorkstrand is maybe the MVP of this team, or is there such a thing as an underrated / MVP combo? Because I think you come in, you expect Patrick Laine to score a bajillion points. You expect Voracek to just be an assist machine. I really think he kind of flies under the radar, but is also, this team doesn't succeed without Bjorkstrand succeeding, I don't think. He really drives the offense. He really drives the success of this team in a way that I don't know if we've had a player like that who's played their entire career with Columbus. And, if I just knock on wood, hopefully he will continue to play his entire career with Columbus. I don't want to see a Cam Atkinson situation in, 3-4 years time. But yeah, I couldn't be happier with Bjorkstrand, and we're going to talk about his letter grade in just a minute. And like I said earlier, coming up next on Locked On Blue Jackets, we are going to talk about who he should play with next season and why, and how I'm going to talk about this forever until Brad Larson gives me what I want. That's coming up next on Locked On Blue Jackets. So Oliver Bjorkstrand should play with Cole Sillinger and Kent Johnson next year, and here's why. He is, like I said, all of the reasons in the second segment. He is defensively responsible. His transition game is elite. He can score like few other people on this team can. And I think if you put him with players like Sillinger, who has a wicked shot of his own, is learning to play center in the NHL, needs maybe a little bit of stability in terms of playing that two-way role, and a guy like Ken Johnson, who is just a phenomenal passer and is only going to get better. I think those three guys could make an extremely lethal line. I don't know that they're going to be the best defensively, which is why I think having Bjorkstrand on that line is important, as opposed to a guy like Voracek, who, is a good supporting player, is, that veteran presence that I think could stabilize that line, but he's not a two-way player in the way that Bjorkstrand is. And this might be a little bit of a hot take. I could see Bjorkstrand maybe getting some Selke talk, or maybe not Selke talk, but along the lines of like Marian Hossa never got to talk. He was never in the Selke conversation because he didn't play center. And I think that's kind of how I think of Bjorkstrand as well. And he's a really, really good defensive two-way winger, but because he doesn't play center, he's just not going to get that same conversation like much like Marian Hossa. I'm not comparing those two players. I think Marian Hossa is he's a future Hall of Famer. He's the first ballot. He's going to get in. I don't know that Oliver Bjorkstrand will be at that same level of respected by everyone in the league, but he has a similar kind of game and a similar set of strengths, I think, to Marian Hossa, which again is why I think put him on a line with Ken Johnson, Cole Sillinger. Just watch the offense go, and I think that is going to be a really, really fun line to watch. And I'm going to talk about it, like I said, until Brad Larson gives me what I want. If I have to fly to Columbus and go to his house, I'm not going to do that for legal purposes. This is a joke, but I want it. I deserve it. Please give it to me, Brad. So I did the letter grades for Bjorkstrand a little bit differently than I've done the previous kind of handful of polls. And I said A+, A, B+, or B, as opposed to A, B, C, D, because I don't think anyone is giving Bjorkstrand less than a B. And I think it's fun to kind of get into that nuance of, was he good enough for an A, or did he just miss the mark? I personally would have given him an A. The majority of the Twitter polls, or the people taking the Twitter poll, gave him a B+, which surprised me a little bit, but I would argue that point with you, but I'm not like, this is not a hill I will die on, saying that Bjorkstrand is an A player, especially because I think they're saving the A's for guys like Line, guys like potentially Werenski. And again, I think the opposite of grading on a curve. I think Bjorkstrand was good. I don't know if Bjorkstrand was as good as we know he can be. I think he still has another level to give. And so I fully expect to be sitting here this time next year. Well, maybe not this time next year. Hopefully the Blue Jackets will be in the playoffs. This, again, knock wood. But I think he still has another level. I think he still has an A game to bring. I think this definitely was his B plus game, but I still would love to see him bring his A or even his A plus game next season. So that's kind of all I've got for you today. Lots of Bjorkstrand talk, looking at the future, things like that. Tomorrow we're going to do exactly the same thing, but with Patrick Laine. The Twitter poll will be probably up by the time the episode is live, and we'll take a look at Patrick Laine tomorrow. It's been Locked on Blue Jackets. I've been Jake Foster. You can find me on Twitter at _Jacob Foster, JAKOBFORSTER. You can find this podcast at LO_Blue Jacket. If you have comments, questions, criticisms, you can email me at lockedonbluejackets@gmail.com. Make sure you're hitting subscribe on YouTube, on whichever podcast app of choice you use. Locked on Blue Jackets is free and available. You'll never have to get behind a paywall for a Locked on product. So thank you once again for making this your first listen of the day, or your second watch of the day, or your third listen of the day. I appreciate you for stopping on by. And until tomorrow, make sure you stay locked on.